Okay, guys, welcome to the Blue Velvet lecture. David Lynch's Blue Velvet, so you're going to want to go and rent David Lynch's movie Blue Velvet from 1986, starring Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern, Dennis Hopper, and then come back here and watch the videos. Um, this class, there's a structure to this class. 2001 was sort of a prologue, a way to get started. I have another film called Barton Fink that's a way to end. In the middle, there are 3 units. Each unit is built around a single movie. This is the Blue Velvet unit. Now, as part of the Blue Velvet unit, I had you guys watch Rear Window. I had you watch The Shining and Night of the Hunter. Now, why those 3 movies? Well, I use all 3 of those. When people watch Blue Velvet, their reaction is often like, this movie's weird, this movie's bizarre, this movie's strange. And it is. Of course, it is a strange and bizarre, if you've seen it now, it is a strange and bizarre and unusual film. But sometimes my students will be like, man, it's so random. It's not random. It's not random. It's strange. It's unusual, but it makes a certain kind of sense, and it's easier to understand when you see where it's coming from. Where is Blue Velvet coming from? It is coming from Rear Window, The Shining, and Night of the Hunter. And there's other things in there too, but those are the 3 that I picked. So now that we've reached Blue Velvet, that's Unit 1. And Unit 2 will be the same thing. 3 movies leading to a David Lynch movie. And then unit 3 is the same thing. 3 movies leading to a David Lynch movie. And then we end with one final film. So why did I have you watch Rear Window and Night of the Hunter and The Shining? The reason why I picked those movies is Blue Velvet, as strange and bizarre as it is in many ways almost it's a very odd, but it's very heavily inspired by Rear Window. It's coming straight out of Rear Window. One way of thinking about it is that what Blue Velvet is doing is processing Rear Window. David Lynch saw Rear Window, he loved Rear Window, and then he made like his own very strange, very unusual version of Rear Window. Now, obviously, he changed so much that many people will watch Blue Velvet and not notice that it has big connections to Rear Window. Usually, when you think about somebody remaking a movie, what you're thinking of is like almost literally a movie that's been made twice. Like it's basically the exact same movie. But what usually mean by a remake is a movie that has a plot, and then the remake just does the plot again with different actors. And maybe they change a couple of things, but basically it's the same movie, but with different actors. This is like the Lion King, right? The new Lion King is a remake of the old Lion King, and yes, they changed some stuff and they updated some stuff, but basically it's the same movie. They decided not to go with songs, but the idea is the same. The basic storyline is what you remember. That's because and those movies are thinking on the level of plot. Here's a plot. This is a good plot. Let's do the plot again with different actors. Like you went on a Broadway show, change the cast, keep the story. David Lynch is working on a different level. I've talked about this class that it's not just about what happens to the characters in their world. It's about who's making it and what does the audience get out of the experience. So in this case, on that level, we need to think about, it's about the ideas. Rear Window is an entertaining movie, but it's also filled with a lot of interesting ideas. It's those ideas that are being remade in Rear Window. Ideas about voyeurism, right? Seeing without being seen. Ideas about sexual relationships, and the way that the voyeurism in Rear Window and Blue Velvet are the reason why a couple can stay together. Without the voyeurism, there's no reason for Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly to stay together. Without the voyeurism, there's no reason for Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan to stay together. So that's a big part of it. I also brought in The Shining. There's an idea in The Shining, which is this idea of good dad replaced by bad dad. Now, of course, it's Jack Nicholson in both cases, and he wasn't really that good to begin with. But the idea of a kind of monstrous, terrifying evil, the sort of very energetically evil dad, is very much seen in Frank Booth. And it's worth pointing out that Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson, Dennis Hopper plays Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, and Jack Nicholson plays Jack in The Shining. They were in a very important movie together in 1967 called Easy Rider. So these guys' careers are linked. They're similar types of actors from the same generation. They've been in stuff together. They're both very dynamic and aggressive and crazy. So I wanted to give you The Shining as a way of thinking, because one of the things Blue Velvet is about evil. and specifically evil visited upon children. And Blue Velvet is also, The Shining is about that, and Blue Velvet is also about that. And this idea of the bad dad that hunts children, that terrorizes women. Um, okay, cool. And then also the idea of a big cosmic evil. And I also grabbed Night of the Hunter. And Night of the Hunter also features a good dad, bad dad problem, although similarly the good dad wasn't that good to begin with. But you have the kid's dad at the beginning, who's killed by the state. He's hung for committing a crime, and then he's replaced by the bad dad. You see that same thing happen in Blue Velvet, where there is a Jeffrey's father goes into the hospital for something. We'll talk about what. Goes into the hospital, and then he's like the good dad, and he goes away, just like John's dad went away in Night of the Hunter. And then in both movies, there's a bad dad replacement, an overly intense hunter of women in both cases, a sort of dangerous figure. And of course, that's the Reverend Powell in Night of the Hunter, and Frank in Blue Velvet. The other thing that was really important about Night of the Hunter, and the reason that I grabbed it, and I said this when we were talking about Night of the Hunter, lots of movies feature a big, cosmic, terrifying evil. Um, they tend to, and what movies tend to do when they involve big forces of evil is it's regular people versus big forces of evil, right? Like, Captain America is just this kid from Brooklyn, and he's fighting Thanos and all of these sort of cosmic monsters and stuff. It's about sort of regular people versus pure evil. What Night of the Hunter does, and what Blue Velvet does that's interesting, is they introduce the idea of a cosmic good. Which is much harder to do. There's so many movies about serial killers, and there's very few movies about like angels, good angels, happy angels, the power of love. They do exist sort of Christian broadcasting, but it's a niche thing because most people don't believe. Most people. It's interesting that a lot of people believe in evil, and very few people believe in a matching power of good. We tend to phrase it as regular people versus the forces of evil. But both Night of the Hunter and Blue Velvet are interested in thinking about cosmic forces of good. Sort of the woman's head in the stars reading the Bible to the children, and she's an almost cosmic force of goodness and pureness. And Laura Dern gives a speech about sort of the power of love and the robins when she's in front of the church in Blue Velvet. So I picked these movies out because I wanted you to see the idea that movies don't just steal like dialogue from movies. And stealing's the wrong word, but processing. They take something, they change it, and they make it into something new. Blue Velvet takes Rear Window, The Shining, and Night of the Hunter, and some other movies, and processes them and makes something new, something original. I'm not arguing that Blue Velvet is a ripoff. It's not a ripoff. It's very obviously its own thing, but it comes out of those movies, and I think it makes a hell of a lot more sense when you see it in the context of the other films. One of the crazy things about this class is Blue Velvet is a famously difficult movie. Nobody is better prepared to watch it than you guys because you've seen these other movies. And of course, 2001, I put at the beginning as a way of introducing the idea that movies are not just pure entertainment popcorn roller coasters. And I love a roller coaster, and I love popcorn. I love a good popcorn entertainment roller coaster. But movies can do other things, which is why I started with 2001. And these Rear Window and Night of the Hunter and The Shining, these are entertaining movies. But Blue Velvet is doing something big. It's a lot of people found it troubling, found it difficult, found it upsetting. It introduces a lot of difficult things that people have a hard time thinking about. I think it's a very entertaining movie, but it's also difficult in the way that 2001 is difficult because it's up to something else. What is it up to? We'll find out in this lecture series. So that's the end of the first video, and I'll see you guys in the next part.